Well, good morning. Good to see you. We're already up to chapter 9. It seems unbelievable. But nevertheless, we are. And of course, it's progressing very nicely. Appreciate all of you that are in the course. Again, I've got about 4 or 5 things to talk to you about. To suggest to you that you might want to explore in this chapter. So the first one, the era of good feeling, era of good feelings. A lot of things happened with the War of 1812. As we mentioned in the previous 2 chapters, I think, it's a turning point, even though it's not much of a war. It's kind of like our Vietnam experience. We won all the battles and then declared defeat and went home. In the era of, in the War of 1812, the British pretty much won all the victories, won all the battles, and declared defeat and went home. Not a terribly bloody war. Didn't last terribly long, but there again, there you go. We have a turning point for so many things. The era of good feelings that followed the War of 1812. Secondly, the first bank of the United States, First National Bank, came on the heels of War of 1812, resisted by many people until all of a sudden there seems to be a whole new way of looking at national banks and the national banking system, and so it comes on the scene, and ever since, of course, we've had a national banking system. Thirdly, after the War of 1812, the various factions, still wouldn't call them parties exactly. They're not organized as parties are today, with huge budgets and rules and all kinds of things like we have today. But nevertheless, these 2 main factions that we had since before the Constitution was written or ratified, they in many ways switch positions. Now later on they'll do this again after the Civil War, but it's amazing how this group had believed in a certain number of items, and then all of a sudden they switch sides and now they believe this, and the other side switches and move back over this way. We've done this about 3 times in a big way in our country. And one of them was after the War of 1812. You got this era of good feeling, you got all this stuff going on. And I guess the parties will come one day and say, hey, I like what those guys believe better than what we believe, so I'm gonna start doing that. I'm gonna keep my party, I'm gonna keep my faction label, but I'm just gonna shift what I believe. Kind of weird, but nevertheless, it happens. That's politics. Number 4. Chapter 9 talks about a so-called corrupt bargain. How corrupt was it? How many people were involved? How much money was involved? Was it really that corrupt? Was there any good was there a bad downside or a good downside? What was the results, and what was the merits of the whole deal in the first place? If that fascinates you, you may want to dig through that part of chapter 9 and become kind of the corrupt bargain expert, if you'd like. Lastly, my old buddy, guy who I've always found interesting, Andy Jackson. The rise of Andy Jackson, his victory of 1828. I've drawn many parallels in classrooms with modern day leaders, Teddy Roosevelt for one, but now we have Donald Trump. Comes out of a period of disenchantment for government. At no point in the history has our Congress been in such low esteem. People think that Congress is worthless, that they never do anything, that they are corrupt. And Andy Jackson comes along out of that period. He's not educated. He's an old Indian fighter. He's a soldier. He didn't know anything about politics, but the people elected him. Common people, ordinary people. I would not even really call them blue collar. I'm talking ordinary working class people elected Andy Jackson. when he was inaugurated. This is not in the book, I don't think, but when he was inaugurated, they almost tore the White House up because his people that elected him, they have a big barbecue on the front lawn, and the place is theirs. I mean, they elected the man himself, and they feel like they got a piece of the government now. For the first time, the government represents them. First time in the history of our country. And they go in the White House and they're taking the paintings off the walls and standing in the velvet covered chairs with the muddy boots, and you know, we're talking about people that kind of like Andy Jackson himself. Anyway, interesting fella. As a sidelight, you know, when I lived in Nashville, Tennessee, I used to always take people who come to visit. I take them out to the Hermitage and show them around where Andy Jackson lived, and it was always fascinating to me and fascinating to people that would tell about. You know, I'd show them. We'd be standing in Andy Jackson's front yard, and they got that long tree-lined driveway where the carriages used to come up and let people out and stuff. And I used to talk about, you know, Andy didn't have a Lexus. He didn't have an Escalade to take him back and forth between Nashville and the White House. He's a tough old man. He wasn't a spring chicken when he was elected president. I'm not sure I could ride a horse from Nashville, Tennessee to all the way up to the White House. I don't know. Geez, be tough, but he was tough. And then I used to take people around to the side of the house where Mrs. Jackson had her little garden. Wasn't much of a garden, but they've reconstructed it just like it was back in the old days when she was there, and she tended her little flowers and stuff. And you stand there in Mrs. Jackson's garden, and you look over this little gazebo, and so much is fascinating about the home and about the garden, but there in that gazebo, dead center, is Andy Jackson's. Is Andy Jackson? He's buried there, right in the middle of that little gazebo. And on his right side, he's got Mrs. Jackson. She's buried right beside him. Guess who's buried on his left? I've done a lot of contemplating about this, but on his left hand is a slave. Whoa, this doesn't make sense. He's a slave owner. Yet one of the most important people in his life was a slave. So important that he wants him buried right beside him. Mrs. Jackson and his favorite slave. Anyway, make of it as you will. But relationships in the days of slavery were complex, and we tend to just throw this out as slavery. You got on one side, you got these slaves that were beaten and treated horribly and everything, and then along comes something like this that requires maybe just a little bit more in-depth study. Well, anyway, Andy Jackson, fascinating old boy. You might want to look at how did he become president? How did, you know, no one gave Donald Trump even a chance to win the election. All the horsepower, all the money, and everything was lined up to put Hillary in the White House. And out of the clear blue, we have the wrong guy, at least in the eyes of many, in the White House. Blue-collar people, angry people, people that are upset with the government. We got a guy that's very similar to Andy Jackson. Well, I'll let you explore that. Have a good time. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.